Today, the world's population is around 7 billion. When people first began farming around 12,000 years ago, it was fewer than 10 million. Earth's population grew slowly, eventually reaching 1 billion by 1800. Since then, better food production and healthcare have caused a population boom. Measuring growth. Demographers are scientists who study human populations. They measure the rate at which a population is growing. To do this, demographers compare birth rates and death rates. The birth rate is the number of live births per 1,000 people in a year. The death rate is the number of deaths per 1,000 people in a year. When the birth rate is higher than the death rate, a population tends to grow. Population can also change when people move into or out of a region. A country's population is the total number of people living within its borders. That number can be large or small. Geographers study a country's population to learn more about life in that country. Population distribution. Population distribution is the spreading of people over an area of land. The world's population is distributed unevenly on Earth's surface. Some places have many people. Other places are almost empty. What factors lead people to live where they do? People try to live in places that meet their basic needs. Natural obstacles such as oceans, mountains, and extremely cold or hot weather limit the areas where people can live easily. Throughout human history, most people have lived in areas with fertile soil, fresh water, and mild climates. Regions with good soil and plenty of water became crowded. Places that were too cold or dry for farming never developed large populations. After about 1800, improved transportation and new ways of making a living changed things. As factories and industries grew, the ability to farm became less important. Industrial centers and large cities could develop in regions that were less suited for farming. Today, population tends to be highest in areas that were centers of early farming, industry, or trade. Population density. Population density is the number of people per unit of land area. It is expressed as the number of people per square mile or square kilometer. Population density gives us a way to describe how thickly settled an area is. It also lets us compare places of different sizes and populations. The density figure for any country is an average. Population density can vary greatly from one part of a country to another. Population density has some important effects on a region. The more people there are per square mile, the more crowded a place is. Cities with high population densities tend to have crowded roads and living conditions. These places require many resources to meet people's needs. Places with low population densities tend to have more undeveloped land. For thousands of years, people have migrated to new places. Migration is the movement of people from one place to another. Scientists believe that more than 50,000 years ago, a group of early humans migrated from Africa to Asia. Over many years, their descendants spread slowly across Asia and Europe. Some crossed from Asia to the Americas. Forms of migration. People often migrate within a country. In modern times, this internal migration has largely been movement to cities from the countryside. People generally migrate to cities to find jobs. People also move from one country to another. When people leave their home country, they emigrate, which means to migrate out of a place. To enter a new country is to immigrate or to migrate into a place. Moving to another country can lead to big changes in a person's life. For example, people moving to a new country may have to learn a new language and new customs. Mass migration can greatly change a region's culture and society. Migration can also affect a region's government, economy, and environment. Reasons for migration. People who migrate are often looking for a better life. They may move to escape poverty, a lack of jobs, or a harsh climate. In some countries, war or other conflict forces people to migrate. These reasons for migration are known as push factors. Push factors are causes of migration that push people to leave their home country. Other reasons for migration are known as pull factors. Pull factors pull or attract people to new countries. One example of a pull factor is a supply of good jobs. People generally migrate because they choose to do so. For example, millions of Europeans chose to migrate to the United States during the 1800s and early 1900s. Some of these people were Irish, fleeing a shortage of food. Others were Jews escaping persecution or mistreatment. Millions more have come from Asia and Latin America since then. History is also full of involuntary migrations. For the most part, these involved the forced movement of enslaved people. In the late 1400s, European slave traders began buying and selling captured Africans. They shipped most of these enslaved people to the Americas. As many as 10 million enslaved Africans were forced to migrate to the Americas. In parts of the world, people are migrating to urban areas from rural areas. Urban areas are cities. Rural areas are settlements in the country. In China, for example, many new jobs have been created in cities in recent years. As a result, many rural Chinese workers have moved to cities in search of jobs. This process is known as urbanization. Urbanization is the movement of people from rural areas to urban areas. The shift from rural to urban. Over the last 200 years or so, billions of people around the world have left rural agricultural areas to move to cities. In 2008, for the first time in history, more than half of the world's population lived in cities and towns. In Europe and North America, urbanization began in the 1800s as modern industry developed. As a result, people moved to cities in search of jobs in factories and other businesses. Today, urbanization is happening most quickly in Asia and Africa. In those places, people move to cities in search of jobs, education, and better lives. Urbanization has created challenges for growing cities, especially those in poor countries. In some cases, cities simply have more people than they can handle. These cities cannot provide the housing, jobs, schools, hospitals, and other services that people need. One result is the spread of slums, or poor, overcrowded urban neighborhoods. Slums exist in cities around the world. Most people in slums live in run-down buildings or shacks. They are unable to meet their basic needs, such as enough food and clean water. Urbanization can also create challenges in wealthy countries. Today, most large urban areas have a central core city. The core city has stores, office buildings, government buildings, and some housing. In wealthier countries, most people live in the suburbs surrounding the core city. As the population of a wealthy urban area grows, so does suburban sprawl. Suburban sprawl is the spread of suburbs away from the core city. As suburbs spread, they replace farmland and other open spaces. New sewer lines, water lines, and roads must be built and maintained by the government. Because most people in suburbs use cars for transportation, suburban sprawl can increase pollution and energy use. Today, many towns and cities are working to limit sprawl.